main discourse about climate change and its impacts on insecurity in Mali is the idea that there's increasing desertification and the Sahara is advancing southwards, leading to scarcity of land and water resources and driving conflicts between farmers and pastoralists. But the reality is so much more complex than that. The way that climate change and insecurity are interacting, we see primarily four things. First of all, people are really trying their best to adapt to the impacts of climate change. They're diversifying livelihoods, they're innovating new farming, pastoralist and fishing techniques, they're migrating. However, many of these adaptation techniques are no longer possible because of the impacts of conflict. They're not working anyway, and in many cases, they're actually leading to decreasing social cohesion and increasing conflict risk. Climate change is one of many factors that are leading to increasing tensions, conflict and violence around access to natural resources between and within communities. So, for example, as a result of climate change, the harvest that you used to be able to get from 1 hectare of land now requires 4 or 5 hectares of land. And as a result of that, as well as increasing demographics and changes to demographics, you're seeing expansion of farmlands into grazing areas, which of course then means that pastoralists, when they come to graze their cattle, don't have anywhere to graze. And so they have no other choice really but to encroach onto farmlands that have been planted on their grazing lands, and you're seeing clashes between farmers and pastoralists. And the third area that we see the interactions between climate change and conflict is that the state, rather than helping people adapt to changes in climate, but also the changes brought about by conflict, is hindering this adaptation, as well as driving conflict dynamics further through behaviour that is rent-seeking, corrupt, and conflict insensitive. So, for example, you have both government officials and community leaders who are increasing the costs of access to land. So the price that people need to pay to access pasture, for example, is now no longer possible for the vast majority of pastoralists. You also have state actors in the name of protecting the environment, engaging in punitive actions and levying of very high exorbitant fines against people who engage in deforestation, because that is one of the very few livelihoods that is still viable right now. And then the final way that we see the interaction of climate change and conflict is the reality that climate insecurity does not affect everybody the same. So you have some groups due to age, class, gender, ethnicity, etc., who are already marginalized and excluded, and they're affected the most. So, for example, women tend to lack access to an ownership over land, and they are blocked from the adaptation and resilience strategies that their male counterparts are able to take. And this, what we see is then climate security widening these already existing inequalities, but also then these higher inequalities then posing a conflict risk and driving conflict and driving grievances even further.